Thanks for having me here today. You know, no great product gets created without great product management and great design and great technology. So with my background in user experience and design, I'd love to talk to you today about how I think about design and how we get there. So today, design is as important as technology. And I had a CEO ask me a couple of months ago, why is that? Why is everybody talking about design all of a sudden? So to answer that, let's take a look at the history of automobile design. Okay, so when the Model T first came out, the challenges at that time were not around design. It was really about just making it work. We were working on getting the car to move from point A to point B and laying down the infrastructure, the automotive networks, so that cars could actually move around and transport people around. So back then, consumers didn't have a lot of choice in the design of their car. Cars were either black, or black, and that was pretty much what you got. Then as technology and infrastructure matured, it became good enough. Design became the differentiator. And so then it wasn't enough for the car to be fast. It had to look fast or expensive or powerful. So design became the differentiator for the car market. So similarly, in the early days of the internet, the major challenges of the day were focused on getting the internet to work, moving packets of data from point A to point B across proxies and servers and different operating systems. And technology was so expensive that it required a lot of venture capital just to get a company up and running. And technology also wasn't widely in the hands of users. Well, now we've reached a stage where technology is now good enough. We have sensors and chips where we need them, when we need them, and mobile devices are always in our hands. We have compute cycles in the cloud, and we have storage that is big enough where we can record every moment of our lives in high bandwidth, in high definition. And also bandwidth is now so fast that the internet just feels like it works. And so this isn't to say that all the technological challenges have been solved, or that this future that we see is evenly distributed across the planet. But the challenges of product development are now shifting towards being useful and emotional experiences that people get from using and interacting with technology. The consumerization of IT is another factor that has driven the rise of design in product development. So as consumer users, we're able to enjoy products like Google Docs and Gmail. And so we have the simplicity of these applications in our hands. So we now don't want to spend 10 hours a day in Microsoft Office or Word anymore. In fact, at Google, we had an explicit strategy of spoiling users at home so they would demand the same tools at work. So design is brand, and we're going to play a game here, okay? I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots of cars where I've brushed out the logos of the cars, and I want you to tell me what brand these cars are. What's that? Volvo, Mercedes, BMW. Oh, it's a little bit more shaky there. Took a little bit longer. Okay, so some of these cars are more easily recognizable. And why is that? You know, these cars include design elements that get carried over from generation to generation and then across each model car in the portfolio. And the design of these cars is so consistent that you instantly recognize what they are. And the designs of the cars that are less recognizable, such as the Lexus, they suffer because they lack this consistency. So Lexus, for example, a lot of the Japanese auto manufacturers change the design of their cars every 2 or 3 years, which makes our mental models of what the car looks like less stable in our minds and thus harder to recognize. And so when we think of brands, we think of logos and identities, but these are just symbols that represent the company. Okay, a company's brand is the customer's perception of that is the consumer's perception of that company, and that perception is built up over time through a series of experiences and interactions that consumers have with the company. And so when a consumer is interacting with the company through any capacity, whether it's through the help desk or the sales channel or through using the product, you're literally in the process of creating your brand. And because consumers are interacting with companies mostly through their products, the fastest way for companies to build up their brand is through design consistency. And this is why I think of design as the brand. Okay, design is simplicity. All right, so here are some household products designed and sold by Muji. And for those of you who are not familiar with Muji, Muji is a Japanese company that sells common, affordable household items with better design and lower cost packaging. And Muji refers to its design philosophy as kenketsu, or simplicity. Their aim is to bring a quiet sense of calm into strenuous everyday lives. Okay, so there's like a Zen-like quality to their product design, and even though these products are simple and affordable, they don't feel disposable. So simplicity is easy to say, but it's incredibly hard to do. And let's just look at the evolution of the Google homepage as a case study, an example, okay? All right, so this is what Google looked like in 1999 when it was still in beta. So it has search box, the Google search bar, button, and I'm feeling lucky. 2001, more links were added, some tribute links for the victims of 9/11. By 2002, Google had added search corpora, so there were tabs so that you could narrow your search based on web, images, groups, or their directory. And then by 2006, they added enough personalization products like Gmail and iGoogle, where they started to add personalization links in the upper right-hand corner. They added more search corpora, so now they couldn't have like rectangular tabs, and they just added links above the search box. 2007, we launched the One Google bar to try to clean up the different corpora that you could choose from. And in 2011, we launched a different version of the One Google bar, and we're starting to get closer. And this is what the Google homepage looks like today, okay, 2014. All right, it took 15 years in the making of this company to achieve this level of simplicity, okay? And it's certainly not because of lack of will or talent. And that it took this long for Google to get there, to achieve this simplicity in the face of people's opinions, competing agendas, growing product requirements and features, just shows how difficult it is to achieve simple design. It was a simple design, but it's an incredibly difficult journey to get there. Design is timeless. Okay. Let's look at the products from Braun, produced in the middle of the last century. Okay, this was under the direction of Dieter Rams. Dieter Rams was the chief design officer at Braun starting in 1955, and he had a really great 40-year career. The key principle that drove the design direction for all of Braun's products during this era was less, but better. So the idea was they stripped down the products to only what was essential and then amplified what made those products great, okay? And these products are so streamlined that they are elegant and modern and still relevant, even though they were designed decades ago. And Johnny Ives often refers to the products from Braun as his inspiration for many of the design of Apple products today. And so whether we're talking about product design or graphic design, great design is iconic. It's not a fad, it's not showy, it's not trendy, it's not easily thrown away. Design is all about the details, okay? And yet it's the details that we often overlook, or maybe we take for granted, or maybe we forego because there isn't enough money or time, or maybe we're just too busy. But there's no great design unless there is great attention paid to detail. And the details matter because they directly impact how we feel about a product or service after we experience and interact with it. So for example, here's a picture of a typical bridge with wrought iron railing, and the vertical bars kind of make you feel like you're in prison, you know. In Japan, when you look at railing, you get the sense that people are always thinking about how they can make the mundane delightful. Manhole covers are another example, okay? This is a typical manhole cover in the US, and yet when you look at manhole covers in Japan, every single manhole cover is beautiful, inspired, and different, making the journey of getting from point A to point B through the streets of Japan more entertaining and joyful. And so in some contexts, attention paid to design means the difference between delighting your users or not. But in other contexts, insufficient attention paid to design details can impact conversion, adoption, and user trust. Design is empathy made tangible. Okay, design details include not only how things look, but also how they work. Okay, and this is where a lot of product management comes in as well. It's not only about how it looks, but also how it works, their ability to satisfy people's needs, explicit needs and unmet needs, and then also the emotions that are created after people interact with the product. And to create a great experience, it requires tremendous empathy for other people and an understanding of people's needs and their motivations. So let's look at another example from Japan. Here's a ticket counter at a subway station. And at the edge of the counter is this little plastic strip placed there so that the person who's standing there at the ticket counter can rest their umbrella or their cane along that little strip while they fish out the money from their pockets to pay for their ticket. And so whoever designed this must have had tremendous empathy and compassion for people who went through this experience and the insight to include this detail here. And then whoever was writing the check for the creation of these ticket stations must have also supported whoever that designer was. Okay. And going back to the Google Apps example, we use Google Apps not just because the apps are simple and easy to use, but because of what they allow us to do. We want to be able to edit in real time with other people, and we want to be able to archive and search email. And this is small functionality that people needed, even though they didn't necessarily recognize or explicitly state that they wanted this. Okay. Right. So design is intent. And there was a study across 160 websites that looked at the impact of latency on the user experience. And just a 1-second delay resulted in a 7% decrease in conversions, 11% fewer page views, and 16% reduction in customer satisfaction. So Google took this design insight to heart. And while Braun's design principle was less but better, and Muji's was Kenketsu, Google's main design principle has always been fast. Okay? And this principle informed every design decision across all of Google's products, and it's reflected throughout the experience. So for example, on the Google search results page, we show how long it takes to serve up the results, like 0.53 seconds. We know from human interface research that people read most efficiently when there's black text against a white background, and this is why all of our text across Google is black. And it provides the best contrast for reading on the screen. So this gets people to their search results even faster, to their destination. Okay, but while the insight that latency matters was very much a design-driven insight, the commitment to speed went beyond the purview of the design team. So this value permeated throughout the company, including billions of dollars of capital outlay to create data centers and web infrastructure to make web search as fast as possible. Okay? And then they also created OKRs across the whole company that was centered around reducing latency. People's whole performance reviews were centered around how fast they could make the web and Google search. So this aspect of the user experience could not have been achieved without commitment from the very top of the company. So when we think about design, we often refer to how a product looks. And as makers of technology, we might also understand deeply that design is not just about how it looks, but also the way it works. Okay? Components that enable people to use the product and how it all fits together. But all of this cascades from the company's strategy, values, and principles, and the scope of the problem that you choose to tackle. And all of that manifests itself in the design of the experiences that you offer. So I'd like to compare and contrast the evolution of Yahoo design and Google design just to illustrate this. Okay, this is what Yahoo looked like around the late 90s, early 2000s. And so as I mentioned before, the web was much slower back then, and so its competitive advantage was to strip the site of as much of dormant as possible. It was mostly text-based, but it was very consistent as a result. So those were listings products. These are communities and communication products. You can see it's generally the same UI framework. Okay, then the .com bust happened around 2000, 2001. All right, so prior to that, this is what the organization looked like. It was functionally organized. From the CEO, you had sales, product, and technology. And within product was design and then product management. Okay, so around the time of the .com bust, Yahoo reorganized into business units. Okay, so from the COO, there was this complicated matrixed organization in which we had different business units. Each business unit represented a different vertical that Yahoo had. So a business unit might be one for Yahoo Classifieds, another one for Yahoo Sports, another one for Personals. Each one had a general manager with mostly a sales background. And then the functions were matrixed in, so product management, design, and engineering were all matrixed into these business units. The business units, the general managers, funded the headcount for design, engineering, and product. And product reported up through the business units. Okay, this is what effect it had on the design. Okay, so this was Yahoo Sports. It saw itself competing against ESPN because they managed their own P&L, the profit and loss statement. Yahoo Sports suddenly saw itself as competing against ESPN and pushed for a redesign that would be competitive and similar to ESPN, a more masculine feel. So Yahoo Sports started to look like this. Okay. Yahoo Personals was trying to appeal to more women. They wanted to get more women on the site, and they saw themselves competing against Match.com. And so they pushed for a redesign that would have a more airy, feminine feel. So they started to look like this. Okay, the design team, we started to push back and say, look, this is becoming fragmented. We don't have a consistent look and feel. We're not creating a strong single brand identity. But the perspective at that time, whether you agree with it or not, is that the general managers were funding the designers, and they felt like, okay, if the designers didn't execute on their vision for how, for who they were designing for and competing against, that they would go to an outside agency. And so this whole idea of like one Yahoo was kind of lost. So eventually, Yahoo's common look and feel eventually became very fragmented. It became a house of brands, so to speak. Okay. Now, this was also another dark time for Yahoo product and user experience. We started creating pages that were confirmation pages. After you sent an email message, a whole page would be served up to tell you that the mail was sent, just so that we could send you present a monster ad. It's a dark time. So I left, and I went to Google. And this is what Google looked like in 2006. So even though there was no style guide and no real common look and feel, there was a general common design ethos. Like Yahoo, Google cared a lot about latency and creating a fast user experience. Both companies understood that this was really key to attracting and retaining users. We undertook an effort starting around 2007 to converge the look and feel for all of our products. Even though it was a completely bottom-up organization and I had no authority over what the products did, we were able to converge the products to a common UI framework, common palette, and a really consistent look and feel. This is what the org looked like at the time. So very similar to Yahoo in the early days, functionally organized. So with a single UX organization, we were able to push through a single vision. Now, eventually, the company did verticalize under Larry Page's leadership. So we have product areas now. So there's one for Android, another one for search, another one for YouTube, and so on. And then within those, there are teams for product design and engineering. So again, design is decentralized. What's the difference here? The difference is that Larry cared about a common look and feel and a common design. And so he said, we're going to redesign Google. I'm going to personally be involved and work with the SWAT team, and we are going to do this. And he got all the SVPs together and the VPs and said, we're going to launch this in 3 months. And so this is what Google looks like today. So even though Google has been verticalized, there's still a common look and feel. What's the difference? It came from the CEO. Okay. So just as a person's posture can reflect his or her inner state, so does your product's design reflect the state of your company. Okay, I've seen org charts, political agendas, and power struggles manifest themselves in the design. I've seen the absence of strategy, values, and principles manifest through design. And so what it means is that you need to think about your design from the inside out. You can't fix your design without fixing these deep issues inside the company or inside the team. And this is why every single one of you is a designer. Every person is a designer, and even the CEO. Whether you recognize it or not, you are all designers. And if you think that the designer that you're working with on your team can patch over your organizational issues or your lack of strategy or vision, you're shunning your responsibility as a product manager to contribute. Okay, so as Dave said earlier, don't be a journalist. You've got to actively participate in fixing those issues. So, just to summarize the Yahoo versus Google contrast, both of these companies started with the same intention, low, latency concerns, having a minimalist aesthetic, and trying to appeal to a wide audience, but had very different outcomes. Yahoo ended up with a house of brands, very vertical focused and very BD and sales driven, and this was, between 2001, 2006, right? So things are different now. Google always has been a branded house, one Google, many products, platform focused, really strong focus on infrastructure and technology, and very focused on product development. So I'm a big fan of 80s alternative music, and while I was writing the speech, I was reminded of this song from Love and Rockets, No New Tale to Tell. And there's this refrain in there that says, you cannot go against nature, because when you do go against nature, it's part of nature too. And I think it's a really nice way to think about design, because you cannot have no design, because even if you don't actively think about design, whatever you end up with is your design. Okay, so there's no such thing as not having a design. You either have thoughtful design or careless design. So that's all the more reason to design thoughtfully. All right, thank you.